that, I want to officially start our webinar. Once again, my name is Dr. Rachel Baling, and I am here from the College of Doctoral Studies. I work in the Office of Dissertations, and I am bringing this webinar to all of our new learners in dissertation from two perspectives. So the first perspective is from my role here as a research specialist. So I support and facilitate the master methodologists that support all of our learners. I also support the SDA chairs, and I work very close with the AQR team and our IRB team as well. But I also present at residencies, and but more than that, a lot of these tips I got as part of this program. So as Dr. Waldschmidt, a little bit embarrassing, but I did just recently graduate. So August 7th is when I officially graduated as Dr. Rachel Baling from our EDD program, and I finished in just under 3 years. So that gives me a little bit different perspective during that time. I went through a crazy divorce, so I waited tables at night. I had two of my daughters living with me who were also going to college at the same time, so our house was a little crazy. So some of these tips and tricks and best practices, they might not apply to everybody, but I feel that they might be beneficial or start you thinking about what might work for you as well. So with that, I am going to go ahead and officially start the presentation. So I'm going to take just 1 second, and I'm going to share my screen. So let's get into that. I'm going to pop in here real quick, and we'll go to the beginning. If you guys could give me a thumbs up and let me know if you could see my slide. Awesome. So these ladies are volunteering their time. They do work with me here in the Office of Dissertations. They are chairs and methodologists and do a tremendous amount of work here, but they're volunteering to be my chat buddies so that they're able to address any questions that come up. And ladies, if you notice any questions that I need to address in the moment, please let me know. When you see hands raised, if you could reach out to those that are asking questions and maybe address them. I think a lot of the content I will eventually address as we go through. But just in case, I will leave a few minutes at the end for learners to jump in and ask any questions that might not have been answered. So with that, I'm going to go over the agenda. So what we're going to talk about today is actually this transition course that you're in. So whether it's 885, 825, or 871, this is that transition class that takes you from your foundational content courses and it gets you ready for your dissertation courses. So this course is considered to be your first of 4 dissertation courses. And so what we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about how to make the most out of this class that you just started. We're going to talk about what those other courses are going to look like, as they are going to be a little bit different and they're going to feel different. We're going to talk about the technologies that are in place for our dissertation learners to support you with your committee work. And we're going to cover some time management. We're going to talk a little bit about that iterative review process and some ideas that you can start thinking about that will help you to achieve those faster approvals as you move through those stages. I'm going to break it down into the prospectus and the proposal. We're going to talk about your methodologist and your committee, and then we're going to really start out our conversation with that cognitive shift that's going to bring you from being a student to a learner, to a doctor, to a teacher. And so with that, I'm going to jump right into the content. And like I said, I talk really fast, and I'm covering a tremendous amount of information. But what I found was, in order to fit it all in here, I talk really fast, but it's all in my slides. So if there's any piece of it that later on you feel is really helpful, I'm going to try to cover the links as best I can, and I'm going to take you on a couple road trips during our time together today as well. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about was that cognitive shift. So it's that thinking that goes with moving from being a master's student or a doctoral student in your foundational classes to becoming an independent scholar and a researcher. So thinking of this journey more of a marathon than a sprint. And what is the goal that we're in now? So it's that goal of moving from getting an A on your discussion questions in your papers to really moving into being able to plan out a research proposal, collect your data, and write up those full 5 chapters of your dissertation. So as you're thinking about that, I want that to be top of mind as you're thinking about all the different things that I'm going to cover today. And the end result of your time today with me is that, one, that you have a little bit better idea of that cognitive shift that you're going to go through, but also how you can get to faster approvals of these different documents by being able to have that cognitive shift and understanding the iterative review process. So the first thing that I wanted to make sure that I cover was, when you're getting feedback from your committee, remembering to incorporate that feedback into your entire document, not just in the sections where your committee highlighted it, because research is all about ripples. And this is why your committee will normally take several review cycles to get the changes down to a level that you need for approval. So I'm going to talk a little bit high level, and then I'm going to go into a little bit more of the details on how to make that happen. So I'm going to move our faces a little bit. So as you're in this first class, I wanted to make sure that I covered with you the communication expectations of doctoral learners now that you're in this class. So some of the things at GCU that's very unique to GCU is our individual success plan, which is the ISP. And that is a deliverable that you're going to have at the beginning of every class. And I'm going to give you some ideas on how to make that more of a project management tool, instead of just something that you check off your list and throw into a Dropbox and get full points for. And then in every class, you're going to use Zoom. So kind of what we're doing now, this is a great way for you to start getting used to it, in that we use this virtual conferencing software in order to meet and talk about your research feedback. So Zoom is a software kind of like Skype. There's a lot of different tools out there. GCU uses Zoom. So that way you're able to see your chair, see your committee, and they're also able to share their screen. So if this is something that you're not really familiar with, what you can do is you can go to zoom.us and you can get a free account and you can practice on it, because it is a skill and it is kind of weird to get used to seeing yourself on camera, moving from one monitor to the other, and being able to share documents. But this is something that we've found for learners that are progressing faster, is that when they get their feedback from their chair, after their chair has had a chance to do their reviews, they set up a Zoom call. And then your chair will get you on the phone. You guys they'll pull up your document and they'll be able to go through each section that you're working on, and you'll be able to see what they're talking about. And we found that this is such an amazing visual tool for learners and for the chair, because the chair might be thinking, oh, why aren't they getting this? And the learner's like, I can't see it. And so this is just a really great way for us to use another layer of communication to help our learners through this stage. And then the next technology that we have for our learners is what we call our learner dissertation page, and that's your LDP. And this is something that you haven't ever used before. So now that you're in this first dissertation class, the expectation is that you go to your LDP twice a week. And the way that that gets set up is, first you have to get your content expert. So if you haven't gotten your content expert figured out yet, I highly recommend that you work with your advisor and get your content expert their paperwork. It usually takes about a week and a half after your content expert has completed their paperwork for our office to create your LDP, and then they'll send you an invitation with instructions on how to go in, how to use it. And I'm going to give you a live demonstration right now so that you can see what an actual LDP looks like. But the expectation for your participation points is that you attend your Zoom meetings, that you complete your ISP, and that you have activity in your learner dissertation page twice a week. And some of those ideas might be weekly progress reports. They might be posts to your chair that they need to review. They might be updates to your calendar. Whenever you have a Zoom meeting with your chair, you will also be expected to go into your LDP and post a quick summary so that you can tell your chair, hey, during our call today, these are the 5 things that we talked about that I'm going to be working on. And it's a really great way for the two of you to come together on those expectations. And then the next thing before I take you on that live demonstration, Loud Cloud. So the weird thing about LoudCloud is I know the first 2 years you get really good about it. You have your rhythm of when to do a discussion question, when to respond to other learners in your group in the main forum, and then when to post your deliverables and such. This is the last class that you're going to have other learners with you in this class. So you might have 4 or 5 or 6 other learners with you in this class, but the next one is really going to start being just you in your chair. And
what's that? Yeah, I put it in my profile area, and then if you say don't start with video, it'll automatically post your profile picture.
So whoever's talking, we can hear you. So if you could please mute yourself, that would be great.
So orientation theory of the institution. This is it. This is the other.
Hold on just a sec. I'm going to try to figure out how to mute. So for my panelists, if you guys want to jump in at any point, just unmute yourselves, okay? Thank you all for your patience. Sometimes people don't realize that they're not muted. So what I was saying was in LoudCloud. So in this first class, you will have discussion questions, but in your next class, you won't have discussion questions except for to post a generic response that says, I am working on my dissertation and I am working in my LDP. So that was something that I wasn't really ready for, but that is a big difference between what you've done in the past and what you will do now that you're in dissertation. And then the next part that I wanted to touch on just really briefly is that there's a difference now between how you're graded in LoudCloud on those deliverables that you upload to your chair. I think it's in week 4 and 7. And the difference between those milestones, so your prospectus and your proposal that you'll be working on with your committee. So I just want to talk about that just for a minute, because you can get an A in your LoudCloud deliverable, but that doesn't mean that your prospectus or your proposal is necessarily ready to go to committee. And sometimes that's a little bit confusing because you're like, well, I got an A, why isn't it ready? But sometimes that A in LoudCloud is about the progression that you did between the first time you delivered it and the second. And it just means that you did a good job with working through those sections with your chair. But there is an added expectation before it needs to go to committee. So you might still get an A in LoudCloud and in that class, but the chair is your gatekeeper to decide if it's really ready and at a level that is ready for it to be left, and sent off to committee. So with that, I'm going to take you guys on a road trip. I want to just give you a visual of what that learner dissertation page looks like. So give me 1 second while I jump into my own learner dissertation page so you can kind of take a look. So give me just 1 second while we jump over to my learner dissertation page, and I'm going to again share, and hopefully that worked. Can you guys see my LDP? Okay. So for those of you that are on a computer, what you're seeing now is my LDP. And you can see that there are some great resources here. So a couple tips that I wanted to give to you guys is that when you do your individual success plan, and you've probably already done it since I think you're at the end of your first week, if not into your second week, you're going to want to go into your calendar function and you're going to add a calendar event and match it up with your ISP. So on your individual success plan, you have different due dates and different things that you want to achieve during this class. But I invite you to take it one step further, to bring those due dates and those milestones that you want to achieve and put them in the calendar. And then what you'll see is up here where it says upcoming events. Once you do that, every time your committee goes into your learner dissertation page, they'll see a milestone that's coming up, and everyone will be on the same page as far as what you're looking to achieve during this class. There's also some really great resources on this page. So if one thing to remember is that you always want to hustle while you wait. So whenever you have a document that your committee is reviewing, whether it's your chair, your methodologist, your content expert, your AQR reviewer, whenever you have downtime, you always want to go into either the dissertation milestone guide, the doctoral DNA, your program of study, and look to see what are the next things that are going to be coming due. And over here on your left-hand side, you can see where it says important links. You can go through these videos. You can go over here to the side where it talks about the IRB, and there's different things for AQR as well. So there's a lot of different resources that are right here that you can link right into, that you can start working on ahead of time. And then whenever you have a deliverable that you are going to send to your chair, you'll send it here as well. So you'll come over here and you'll go to email and you'll send an email to your chair, and then you'll put the document in the appropriate folder here on the right-hand side. So that is just some of the resources here, and this is located on DCNet. So once you're done with your learner dissertation page, you can click back on here and you can go to the different resources as well. So I just wanted to share that with you guys, give you guys a great visual of what that looks like. This is where you will do primarily like 90% of your activity will start to be on your LDP instead of in LoudCloud. And that was something that I wasn't really thinking about when I first went into this stage, so I wanted to give you guys a heads up. All right, I'm going to go back to the presentation. Are you guys able to see my slide again? Okay, awesome. One thing that I did want to mention is oftentimes throughout our time together tonight, you'll see me use my hands, and you'll see me put 2 hands up. It's because you're going to want to get 2 monitors. And that's my representation of 2 monitors. There's one screen here and one screen here. So if you don't currently have 2 monitors, find a way to get it cheap. Yeah, I actually have 3, my laptop and then my 2 monitors here. That is one of the best tips I could ever give you on how to make changes to feedback in a very organized and systematic way. It will change your world. So if you don't have multiple monitors already, find a way to get them cheap, figure out how to work on them, and just practice, because it will really help. The next thing that I wanted to talk about is another component of that cognitive shift. So this shift is really being able to understand that iterative process. And it's a struggle. It was a struggle for me. I like things on a checklist, cross it off, done, never look at it again, move on. But that is not what this program is about. That is not what research is about. It is about the iterative process. So a couple things that are major components of that is scholarly writing and scientific research skills. So when we talk about scholarly writing, I think the biggest thing is to be self-aware. You're going to get feedback for the first time at a very complex level, and it's going to be very complicated, and it's going to be very in-depth. I remember when I turned my proposal into my chair for the first time, her summary comments, the first one right off the bat was, "Rachel, great job, well done." And then she had over 60 bubble comments throughout my document. And I was so confused. I thought, I know what I mean when I say good job, but I don't think it's what you mean when you say good job. But her comment was, "Rachel, this was a great job, but these are some things that we need to tighten up." And then once I addressed those comments, I thought, okay, now I'm done. She'll turn it into committee and I'll move on to, no, that's not the case. So we had to go to the next level, and then a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper. And so part of that scholarly writing is really to be ready to be self-aware. So when you get that feedback, really understanding the process of how to style your headings, how to use those navigation tools in Word, how to set up your table of contents, how to, like I said, how to style your headings, how to work with track changes and bubble comments. There are a tremendous amount of YouTube videos that you can look at to get yourself ready to work with this kind of an iterative process. And then the next one is just understanding your gap, understanding which one of those components of writing you need to work on, and then go in and watching the videos, reading the articles, and doing whatever you need to do to be able to self-correct, because this stage is really all about taking that information that's in your head and writing it in a very scholarly way so that your committee understands what you're trying to say and what you're trying to propose. The next one is about that scientific research or expectations. And I want to mention this once, and I'll probably mention it a couple times, but approval never means done. So you might get approval on your 10 key points in residency, and then your chair is going to look at it after you tweak it a little bit, and they're going to say, It's out of alignment. Let's work on it again. So they'll work on it and work on it with you until they approve it. And then you're going to move it into your prospectus. And then you're going to work on it and work on it. And then they'll approve those components of your prospectus. And you'll move it into your proposal. And then you'll work on it and work on it. So it's being looked at different stages. And so I just want you to keep that in mind, that even though those components were approved at that stage, it's never done until the dean signed your D80 and your dissertation goes to ProQuest to get published. It is an ongoing, constantly moving thing. Learning your methodology and learning your design is very, very important. Some of the resources are to take the research ready modules, the dissertation ready modules, linking in to your residency documents, which is the it should be RSD 881, and then reading dissertations. And I'm going to go into that a little bit more in depth, but I wanted that to be on the slide because this slide is all about that iterative process. The next thing that I wanted to touch on, and just touch on it very briefly, is those doctoral dispositions and that professionalism that is expected of doctors. I mention this because when you get really involved in this program, there's so much ambiguity and there's so much collaboration that happens that, you know, you might be chugging along right in these sections and your chair's thinking that it's going fine, and then you get feedback from your methodologist who adds in another component, throws up a red flag, might give you some feedback, and then all of a sudden you're feeling, oh my goodness, why didn't someone tell me this 17 paragraphs ago? That is all part of the process, because as you tweak and edit and add in that scholarly voice, it changes it just a little tiny bit. And once again, it's a ripple effect. So you might change some component that was alignment before, but you make that change and now it's out of alignment. So having that professional level humility to be able to discuss these scholarly differences of opinion, being prepared to compromise and negotiate, being very respectful of other people's time and input, and coming from a place of tact and empathy and being a role model of Christianity becomes very, very important, because when people feel frustrated, it sometimes comes out in maybe an unprofessional way. And I just want to remind you that that expectation is that you present yourself in a scholarly, professional way at all times. The next one that I wanted to talk about is your dissertation is not just a part of your life, it becomes your life. It starts to transform you in very sneaky ways. So in order to get through this process, looking at every aspect that you can to save an hour here or a half an hour there becomes very, very important. So some of the time management tips that I wanted to share with you is, for one, streamlining every possible thing in your home and your work life to give yourself that time to do this very complex thing, which is doing independent research. Some suggestions are maybe have a dedicated place and a time to study, but schedule special time with your family and friends or your community work so that you can maintain that balance. Scheduling milestones to graduation and then working backwards, and I'm going to show you a visual of what I did that might be very, very helpful. But also scheduling a specific time of the day, of the week, to write those very specific sections, and then never wavering from your weekly goals. Because now that you're in this start of it, this is the ABD. This is that infamous time where you've done everything but write the dissertation. And this is where students feel that sense of isolation, and they start feeling like, there's not as many deadlines, and there's so much ambiguity. So I encourage you that life is messy, and you're gonna probably have to move things around. Learning your methodology and design is really going to help you, and learning how to write well and always writing well is going to help you in your time management as well. So this is one slide that I wanted to share with you that you'll notice at GCU that we always call doctoral students learners, and that's because students, someone's teaching you. As a learner, it's your own personal quest to learn something for yourself And doctors are the expert in the inquiry process. So that process of becoming an expert through the literature and then becoming an expert in how your literature can be, or the question that you have can be answered from research questions and from the methodology and design that you choose. And then once you become a doctor, being able to become a teacher. And teachers are those doctors who seek to understand a phenomenon, go through that research process to understand the results well enough to explain them to others using data and a scholarly voice. And this is the life skill that's going to add another depth to your current understanding of what's around you and also to your career. So some of those technologies, I put it here all on one quick page for you, and we did go over each one of those already. This is a visual that I wanted to share with you of an ISP that really began with the end in mind. So this is an ISP that went through and put very specific goals and very specific due dates. So I want to encourage you to look at an ISP not as just something that you upload and get some points for, but as an actual project management plan. And the better you are at doing this and getting committee involvement, the better, because your committee will be able to come back to you and say, you know what, Rachel, that's not a realistic goal. You need to think about this and this and this. Or don't forget, in this stage, in this class, you're also going to need to do these 2 or 3 things. And that will help you to really self-assess where you are in each class. So using it as a project management tool and beginning with the end in mind. And I think Stephen Covey said it best when he said, begin with the end in mind. So what I've done here is I went into the program of study and I printed out what those last courses were going to look like. So courses 15 through 20. So right now you guys are in course 17. So you can see here on my screen that that is your 885 course. So all I did was say, okay, if I want to graduate at the end of my 20th course, what milestone do I have to achieve and what are the dates of those classes? And then I started working my way backwards. Then I looked at myself and I said, oh my goodness, I am way behind already. And I started panicking a little bit. Panicking only helps if you're able to operationalize it and start adjusting wherever you need in order to get back on track. So that's what told me that I needed to change what I was doing on my weekly basis. So that's when I decided, okay, every Saturday and Sunday from 7 to 3, I need to drive down to my office where I have no distractions and work on my dissertation. So by doing this, this really brought it and made it real to me. So I wanted to share that with you because this might not work for everybody, but this kept me very, very honest and dedicated to hitting those study times. So this first part of our time together, and we've been together for about a half an hour, was really more of that high level. So the rest of my time with you is going to be more about the nitty-gritty tasks and some of the things that will really help you in this class and beyond. So this is actually my favorite part of the presentation. So this might not work for everybody, but this is something that really helped me because once you start writing chapters, there's a lot of different components and a lot of different moving parts, and it's really easy to kind of get lost in it and lost in the back and forth between you and your chair and your committee. So one thing that I did was on my desktop, on my computer, I created 10 folders. And these are just some ideas of some of the folders that worked for me. But now that I'm done and I've graduated, I came back and kind of tweaked it a little bit because this kind of evolved as I moved through those last couple months. But having a folder, so every time I was done with something, I put it back in the folder. It really helped me to keep organized. There's a lot of ambiguity in this process. So wherever you can put structure, it's going to help you to have faster reviews because then when you need something, you go into that folder where you stored it. It's just like always putting your socks away in the right drawer every time you do laundry. Then you know when you need socks, you just go in that drawer and you're going to find all the socks you own. So that's just a really good way to look at it because like I said, it's an iterative process. You're going to be going back and looking at these pieces over and over again, and you want to be able to do that very fast. Another thing that when you guys are in this very first class, if you haven't already completed the dissertation ready training or the research ready training, I advise you to use those resources. They're a great part of that cognitive shift of getting you ready for some of the amazing resources that GCU already has created for learners in this very situation that you're in now. So I included links here. You can also Google it on DCNet, and you can find these links as well. But I just put it here just so you have a very quick way of jumping in. They're self-paced. They're not part of the class. They're not required, but that is a great way to lean in and to really embrace this process. All right, for those of you that are still working on your prospectus, I wanted to make a slide out of those best practices. So in this class, your goal is to get your prospectus approved. But what I want you to remember is that your 10 key points is probably the one document that's going to help you through review cycles faster. And I know I, for one, when I got done with residency number 2 and I thought, oh, I got an A on that, I never want to look at that that silly document again. That was something that I really changed my mind on later. Because as I went through and I fine-tuned my proposal and I got feedback from my committee and I had to make adjustments to my research questions and to some of the other components of my 10 key points, what I found and what worked for me was I kept a very updated 10 key points on one of my monitors at all times, so that whenever my methodologist or my content expert or anyone said, hey, Rach, you need to tweak this, it's out of alignment, let's update your research question, let's go back and talk about this, I pulled up my 10 key points, I updated it there, and then I was able to quickly move it from my 10 key points that was, again, aligned into my proposal or my dissertation. So I will tell you that that is the one tip, besides getting 2 monitors, that will really help you to be more efficient, is keeping that 10 key points always updated. And it should be single-spaced, about 1 page, keep it very simple, and always have 3 to 5 high-quality in-text citations right there, so you know which article is going to help you to write each one of those sections. And then as you keep working on your lit review, update it there as well. Another point that I wanted to remind you is if you don't already have 2016 articles and even some dissertations in your reference list, you need to start updating those now. Google Scholar should be your best friend. So if you have articles that you really liked that talked about certain components that you need to put into your research, but they're from 2012, 2013, go into Google Scholar, put it in there, look below where it says cited by, and start pulling up those articles to see which researcher pulled that information even closer into present day. That will help you a lot to add validity to your scholarly voice by using the most updated research. The next thing that I wanted to talk about was prospectus. So in this class, you really are looking to get your prospectus approved. So even though we don't have the D20 official form anymore, you still have to get an approval from your full committee. So that means your methodologist and your content expert at the prospectus stage. So this is when you stop worrying about your GPA. You just need to be passing your classes. Now it is all about passing and progressing through those different milestones and start working on your proposal. So your prospectus should only be 6 to 10 pages of writing. Don't overwrite. The more you put into each section above and beyond what should be in there, the more you have a chance of misaligning. Follow the recommended length in the criterion table. So as you're getting ready to turn in your prospectus to your chair, you want to pull up your prospectus and look at the criterion table. Now the criterion table will say in the section it should be 3 to 4 paragraphs. And 9 times out of 10, when you look in the criterion table, it's 3 to 4 bullet points that need to be in there. And that is the system behind it. And so each one of those items that should be in that section, build a paragraph around it. No more, no less. And then as you're going through it, just always making sure that you are starting to pull down and work on your proposal now. So if you don't already have a working draft of your proposal, you want to go into DCNet, pull down that proposal draft, and start moving your work into your proposal and start really reading through. On the right-hand side of that proposal template is excellent instructions on form and formatting, on what components are. So I know, please don't do what I did. I went through, I pulled down the proposal template, and I deleted all of those silly comments that were in my way, making it look messy. Don't do that. If you did that, go pull up the fresh one, because there has been a lot of time and thought put into those comments that have tips on how to style your headings, how to do the form and formatting, why those components are in there, that you will really need once you get to the dissertation phase. So that is my tip on this section. And then, so this is just a recap of kind of the things that we've already talked about. So I put this all on one page so that later on, when you guys have had a chance to kind of think about the different concepts that I talked with you about today, flip to this slide. So this slide puts kind of everything that I've kind of talked about already onto just one PowerPoint. And then this is really the first class that you've had a chance to work with a committee. So I want to kind of talk to you about that. Your chair, you'll notice that we don't call them your teacher and we don't call them your instructor. And that's because they're your dissertation chair. And in the industry, whether it's traditional universities or it's online universities, your chair is your process expert. They're the ones that have not only published their own journal articles, so they're really familiar with committee work and the whole iterative process. They're very familiar with those 5 chapters. They're very familiar with the different milestones that you have to go through, which is getting your committee, writing your prospectus, writing your proposal, defending your proposal, going through AQR, going through IRB, defending your proposal again, or your dissertation again when it's the full 5 chapters, and then going through form and formatting, and then going through Dean's review. They are your process expert on that. So they are your dissertation coach, and they're there to help you by managing your committee and your next steps. But just keep in mind that thinking of them as your peer, as a doctoral peer in the doctoral community, and a fellow independent researcher is the way that to look at your chair, not as someone who's there to be your teacher, to teach you about your methodology or teach you about your design or about how to do your data collection or teach you how to do writing. They're there to be your process expert. So I encourage you to always keep that professional boundary, because just like someone at work, you wouldn't want to necessarily invite your boss to your dinner table at Thanksgiving when maybe your family might be inappropriate or they might overshare, bring in childhood pictures. But I just really encourage you to keep that professional boundary and to think of them as your peer. I know when my chair explained that to me, she's like, Rachel, if you think of me as your peer, as a fellow doctor, and you start thinking of yourself as a doctor, you will be more likely to turn in high quality work than if you think of me as your teacher, where you just throw me you're good enough and then look to me to give you all that editorial support. And it really helped to hold me more accountable to turning in higher quality work when I started to think of her as my peer instead of a teacher or an instructor. Now, as far as your methodologist, they are there to assist your chair. So they're the ones that look at what you've already written and give your chair feedback. So they're there to make sure that what you have written and what you've put together for your prospectus or your proposal is doable. And they're there to really help you to say, you know what, dear committee, this looks like a great study, but I anticipate some red flags when you get to IRB, or there might be some structural changes that you might run into when you start doing data collection, because they're the expert on the design. So they're there not necessarily to teach the learner about methodology, about stats or quant or qual or how to code or theme or how to write up your analysis. They're there to really be that support for the chair because your chair is your partner. And then your content expert. When you're picking your content expert, make sure that they have the time to do this. They won't be brought in until you get to your proposal stage. So your chair will be your gatekeeper. Your chair will be the one that will say, you know what, Rachel, I feel like your proposal is at a stage where it's time to bring in the committee. And they will send it off to the content expert. They'll send it off to the methodologist. And then those committee members, the turnaround is 2 weeks. And then they'll give feedback, and then your chair will help you to operationalize their feedback. And this is what that process looks like. So your chair will work with you back and forth. When they feel that it's ready for the methodologist to give their input, they'll send it to the methodologist through your LDP. And then it will usually take about 2 weeks. So that's the official turnaround, is that 10 business days once, now that you're in dissertation, because they're looking at it at such a complex level. They're not just looking to see if you synthesized a couple random journal articles. They're looking to see if it's at a level where your alignment is there to do a research project and collect data. So they're looking at it at a very forward-thinking perspective, and it really does take 2 weeks for them to look at that. Then they'll notify your chair at the end of that time that their feedback is there. They'll give the chair 24 hours to meet with them in case there's something that maybe the chair needs to clarify, and then the chair will meet with you, and that's usually by Zoom. And you will go back and forth a couple times with the reviews with the methodologist. It usually takes about 2 to 3 review cycles before the committee will come together and do an approval. So just be ready for that. I was thinking I was going to get done the first time. So just be ready for that and be patient. But the most important thing you can do is to hustle while you wait. So anytime that you have a document that's being reviewed by committee, whether it's chair or methodologist or content expert, always be very, very clear with your chair. Hey, while Dr. Selke is reviewing my document, these are the things that I think I should be working on. Can you confirm that this is the best use of my time? And that is the best way for you to have this ownership and not feel like you're a victim of the process. I've included here a link to a page, and I'm going to actually take you guys there real quick. So I'm going to stop sharing. I just want to show you some of the resources that are there. So I'm going to take you to this link really quick. Give me 1 second. Dun, dun, dun. Give me just 1 second. My screen is a little bit slow sometimes. Not yet? All right, here we go. Here we go. How about now? Okay. So when you click on this link, this takes you to our resources tab. And what you'll find here is a tremendous amount of resources to hustle while you wait. So the very first minute that you have downtime, you're going to want to go in here and click on our IRB. You're going to click on our AQR review. We have best practices trainings. We have dissertation committee. The dissertation milestone is step-by-step instructions on what you're doing now and links to those resources. Here's that dissertation ready that I talked about. Here are those templates that I talked about as well. And there's also the research ready webinars. So there is a tremendous amount of resources right here that will help you in this very important part of your program. One document that I do have on my slide as well, but I'm going to show you where to find it, is under here, under dissertation templates. So if you click on there and go to this document that says 10 points to prospectus to proposal, and the dean put this here about a year ago, but this is my favorite document. So this is the one document that will help you to move from the 10 key points to the prospectus to the proposal and keep it all in line. So for those of you that can see this, and those of you that are very visual learners, you'll see that it tells you exactly from your prospectus, each one of those 10 key points. Let me see if I can make it a little bit bigger for those of you that can see it. 1 second. So when I was getting ready to move my prospectus to my proposal, on one monitor, I had this document. Well, it's a little bit later. Can you guys see my screen? But it's small, right? Okay. So I'll show you on my PowerPoint, but I just wanted you guys to see where it was. But on one monitor, I had this document, and on the other monitor, I had my proposal template. And it really helped me to see which section of my proposal moved in directly to my from my prospectus to my proposal, and it made it very, very organized for me to move to one to the next. So I'm going to stop sharing that, and I'm just going to show you guys where it is on my PowerPoint. So give me just 1 second to go back to my document. How about that one? A little bit better. Okay. So this is slide 24 for those of you that are taking avid notes. Just kidding. But this is something that will really help. Really great visual. So I'm going to go back and cover that last slide. So some writing tips that I wanted to cover, and we have about 15 more minutes together, so I wanted to make sure that I covered this, and then I'll go over the next couple slides a little bit faster. And if you want a copy of this whole thing, please make sure that you send me an email. But this has to do with writing. So one thing that I found is once you start moving into the proposal and you start writing sections that you haven't done a lot of reading about, or that you haven't done a lot of writing about in previous courses, I invite you to break it down into chunks. So whenever you're writing those really challenging sections, this is something that I did that might help you. So on the first day, I went into Google Scholar, or I went into the GCU library or to ProQuest, and I pulled down 3 to 5 articles that had to do with that section. Then I put them aside and went about my day. Second day, I would read those articles and highlight anything that really jumped out at me that really had something to do with my own research. And then on the cover page, I forced myself to make 10 bullets and to figure out the 10 key points of that research. Then I put it away. Then on the third day, I would go through that section that I was writing from my proposal, and I would go to the criterion table and I'd look to see, okay, this criterion table says 4 components need to be in here. And I would take those components and make those into 4 paragraph headings or topic sentences. And then I would build a paragraph around it just by free writing. And then I would put it aside and walk away. Then on the 4th day, I would go back. Oh, sorry. So the first day, I would just write the topic sentence and put in the citations that I was going to use to address that. And then on the 4th day is when I would write the sections, just free write. I wouldn't worry about punctuation or spelling or making sure the citations looked good. I would just free write. And then on the 5th, and then I'd put it away. Go do my job, take care of my kids, take care of my family, busy life. On the 5th day, I would come back, and that's the day that I would edit my previous work, add in-text citations, and make sure that I was fully addressing each one of those components from the criterion table. This helps you to take what is in your mind, what you have read, and really let your mind wrap around it, because this information is very complex. And sometimes you need your subconscious to wrap around it and to think about it and to think about unique connections, because you're not just redoing what someone else has done. You're swimming out of a huge body of literature and coming up with a very unique way to do the research that is your passion. But it's a lot of pressure for us that have never done research before to do that in one sitting. And sometimes it's unrealistic expectations for you to, in one sitting, go to Google Scholar, find the articles, read it, understand it to the depth that is there, and then being able to summarize it, synthesize it, and incorporate it into your study. That's a lot of pressure. So this was one way that really helped me to put pen to paper and to take what was in my brain and put it onto paper in a very structured way. So Another part to remember is when you're writing or you're in any of these sections, it is very, very normal for you to feel frustrated and for you to start having self-doubt and start thinking, am I smart enough to do this? Like, why can't I understand this? It's not a reflection of your IQ. It's not a reflection of your ability. It is a reflection of that space of liminality that you're going through in information that you know makes sense. In the back of your mind, you know it makes sense, but you haven't moved through that phase of being able to wrap your head around it. That space of liminality is what this part of your doctoral program is about. And that's going to happen over and over again. It's part of that iterative process of moving through this cognitive shift to become an independent researcher. But when you feel stuck and you're in that space of liminality where things just are not coming together for you, find a way to take a time out. For one, I made a 30-minute timer on my phone. And anytime I just felt so frustrated that I could not write a scholarly sentence to save my life, put my timer on, I stepped away. I cleaned my desk. I went to Google Scholar and updated some articles, something that had nothing to do with my brain working. Then when my timer went off, then I would come back in and I would feel more refreshed. But I want you to know, I want you to hear it from me, from someone who just went through this successfully, that is normal and it should happen. That means that you're leaning into this at the depth and complexity that you need to. So I want to be the one to encourage you that it's going to happen and just fight through it. Find a way, find a system to find a way to get through that. So this next point, once again, I just summarized that 10 points in prospectus. Here's that document that I showed you that is really helpful. Now for a proposal, the same thing. This is just some really great tips to remind you that each section doesn't need to be perfect the first draft. Just keep going through and going back to that table of contents, going back to that criterion table and making sure that you've hit each one of those things that need to be addressed throughout your document. This is just a reminder on chapter 2. Chapter 2 is the chapter where you become the expert. When you've dug deep enough into here, then you will be able to successfully defend your proposal. So the chapter 2 is a constant work in progress. So don't let yourself get lost in it. Just know that going back in and constantly looking at your references and making sure that they're high quality. I know for one, I had so many references, and it wasn't until I started to really think about defending my proposal that I really took a better look at my references and the articles that I had selected way earlier on in my program. And I found that as I read more and I understood the research, that I was able to say, no, this article it doesn't belong here. It didn't earn the right to be in my lit review. And you will start to get more and more picky about the articles that are in there. And that is an amazing thing. I want to give us a few minutes to answer any questions at the end, but this is something that really worked well for me, and I wanted to make sure that I shared it with you. So when I moved from the prospectus to the proposal, I felt a little bit overwhelmed because it was 3 very big, complex chapters, and I'd never written a chapter before. I'd never worked with a table of contents, and I felt that my proposal was so little, and my prospectus was so little, and my proposal was so big that I needed to give myself some wins. I needed to give myself some momentum. So what I did was I went into the proposal template and I updated and styled all of the different sections, tailored it to my own study, and then I printed out my table of contents. And then each one of the sections that I had already written something about, I crossed off. So you can see here on my screen how I crossed off the intro, the background, problem, purpose, and so forth. Any section that I had never written about, such as advancing scientific knowledge, never written about it. It's not in my prospectus. So I highlighted that in yellow. And then I went to the criterion table and I looked at the recommended length. So that recommended length is 2 to 3 paragraphs. And then I gave myself a due date. And I said, I can write 2 to 3 paragraphs by 8/22. Today's the 17th. I can do that in a couple days. So I went through my entire table of contents for chapters 1 through 3, and I gave myself due dates. And then I had that printed and I had it on my office wall so that every time I sat down to work on my dissertation, I started section by section. And as I wrote something, I highlighted it in pink so that I can see at a glance what momentum that I had made. So every time I went to update my ISP or my calendar and my learner dissertation page, this was my roadmap and this was my project management tool. And it really helped me. So anytime my chair was like, hey, Rachel, what are you working on? Oh, let me see. And I was able to go back to my sections and being able to really keep myself on track. Because it's really easy when you get at this stage to start feeling guilty about, I used to volunteer at several different places. I used to do a lot of different things, but I had to really make time for my studying and my writing because it gets very complex and sometimes it takes a whole day to write a paragraph, but you need to keep yourself on track. So this is something that really worked for me. So I wanted to make sure I had a chance to share it with you guys as well. So this next section is just something that I have summarized from the tips that I've shared with you guys already on how to get through your review cycles faster and get those approvals faster. So please make sure that you spend a little bit of time and you go through the slide when you get a chance. And then the last thing that I wanted to talk about here was learning your methodology and design. I can't stress enough how important it is for you to really understand the design that you've chosen and how you're going to really go out and collect your data. When you're sitting in your proposal defense, it's not going to be your methodologist that's going to step in and speak for you. It won't be your content expert or even your chair. It's going to be you telling them, based on the information from the literature, how you're justified to go out and do your proposal. So you will feel so much more confident when you really understand your methodology and design. And once again, these are some links to those researcher skills that will really help you in that as well. This last slide that I wanted to leave you guys with is D's trump A's and C's trump all. So the D's, so I want to encourage you to stop thinking about just getting an A in this class, but really focusing on D's. And those D's are the dissertation milestones. Those are the rites of passage that mark your scholarly writing progression. And those C's, that is the cognitive shift. So that is that shift that we've talked about today during our time together of becoming an expert in the research in these different stages as you move to successfully defending your proposal. And I went ahead and just on this slide and the next one, I laid out what those different D forms are going to look like. So they're also all over DCNet, they're in the milestone guide, they're everywhere, but I wanted to put them all in one place because they are so relevant to what you're doing as you move through these milestones and really being able to stay busy and hustling while you wait as you move through this. And then for your convenience, I've put together this D form progression so you can see each one of those milestones that you're going to be going through with your committee as you get to graduation. And then the last part of our time together is some quick links to RefWorks is a great way that is free for GCU students, and you can link it to your the library. So every time you pull up an article, you can dump it into there. So these are some different links on data collection guides, our SAGE research, our dissertation design resources. So just some really great content as doctoral students that are available to you. And I've put the links here just to make it a little bit easier for you. Now with that, we are almost to the end of our time, but I did promise to leave some time for any questions that might have come up. So I want to ask our panelists to see if there was anything else that might have come up during the chats and our time together that maybe I can address for any learners out there, or any comments.
I don't think so, Rachel. We just had a question come up about, does the content expert have to be from within GCU? And my response, of course, was no. And in essence, you want to choose the best person for the job. You want somebody that has the time and has the recent working expertise in that area. And so whether they're from within or without, there's pros and cons on both, but you want the best person for the job.
Exactly. That's a very good point. And making sure that they have that vested interest. And seeing you further that research, because they're going to only get paid a very small stipend, and they can't be in it for the money. It really needs to be that they are there to support you and add that scholarly voice to your lit review to make sure that you're bringing in the most updated research to tie everything all together. So I think Dr. Selke said it best, is you want to pick the best person for the job.
And I'll add, don't be afraid to ask someone who's the top in the field. And so I actually recently had a student who was basing her entire dissertation off of primarily one person's work. And she sent an email to this individual, and the individual said, absolutely, I'll be your content expert, and has been extremely beneficial. And so don't be afraid to ask. You never know.
And I will tell you that the leading psychologist who developed my instrument, he is also the psychologist program chair for UT Austin, named Dr. James Pennebaker. And I reached out to him to be my content expert. And although he had to say no because he was too busy, he did direct me to one of his proteges, who was also a leading statistician and psychologist at UT Austin as well, agreed to be my content expert. And I later on flew down to Austin to meet with him. And I spent 4 to 5 hours with Dr. Pennebaker, and it changed the depth and complexity of my research and changed my chapter 5 in a way that I could never have imagined. And so you never know if they're going to say yes or if it leads you down another path. So I really encourage you to put together, and I put it on a video. I put my 10 key points behind me, and I videotaped it, and I sent it in a Dropbox. And they were able to really understand what my research was about. And he was able to tell me right away, yep, that looks great, and I would love to be part of your committee. So be creative about it, but be very succinct. Was there any other questions that might have come up that we should address before we say?
I have one more really random question, and I believe you answered this in the beginning.
Okay.
You have assigned the methodologists for each of the students currently in here, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And they are assigned based on your chair. So your chair will primarily work with a select few of methodologists. And so that's how that person is selected, because they already have a relationship with your chair. My team should be emailing you before the weekend to let you know who that methodologist is. But get your learner dissertation page, get your content expert as quick as you can, because then you can see all your committee in one spot on your LDP. With that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the call. I do want to thank each and every one of you. We had quite a big group here today, and I know that each one of you have very busy lives, and I am very honored to have been able to spend this time with you. I know not every one of my tips and tricks will be exactly relevant to your own individual journey, but I hope that it sparks something in you to start thinking about how to go through this process and really owning this. And I look forward to seeing each one of you walk across that stage of graduation. So thank you all. Thank you all to my panelists as well. You ladies do an amazing job of being my chat buddies. And with that, I just want to remind you guys, if you want a copy of this, please email me. I'd be more than happy to send it to you. All right. Have a wonderful night, and I will see you guys all at graduation.